Witajcie, przetłumaczyłam wywiady z 2 osobami, które były w tej samej klasie co Jeff. Te wywiady są z kilku różnych programów. Były one realizowane na przestrzeni kilkunastu lat. Pierwszą osobą jest koleżanka Jeffa z klasy Marta, drugą kolega z klasy Mike. Chodzi o szkołę średnią.
He was quite an enigma. He could make people laugh. But what made him different about that was that he always made himself the target of ridicule in doing that. He would always set himself up in these very bizarre situations, and often people laughed because they were so embarrassed, and embarrassed both for him and for themselves. One of the strongest memories I have of Jeff was that it seemed to me that he was drunk a lot. And beginning at a very young age, I first remember it about 15 or 16, and especially at the age of 16 was when I noticed that he was actually drinking in the open in school, in the classroom. And both astonished me, and also the fact that nobody seemed to notice or care, I found quite amazing at the time.
And I remember sitting next to him in a first period, I believe, history class, and he had a styrofoam cup of scotch, I believe it was scotch. I remember saying, "Jeff, what is that?" And he threw his head back and he shook it and he said, "It's my medicine." But clearly he was getting drunk at 8 o'clock in the morning.
A school-sponsored trip to Washington, D.C.
And Jeff said, "I have an idea, let's go see the vice president." And we sort of all laughed and said, "Yes, sure, the vice president."
Jeff went to a payphone. When he returned, he announced that they would be seen in the office of Vice President Walter Mondale in 2 hours.
He had explained that we were high school students from Ohio working on our school newspaper, and we were in town for a week, and could we come and talk to someone in the vice president's office?
It's very clear at the end that he was utterly, absolutely out of control with all of this. The bodies truly were piling up, literally were piling up.
They got massive stuff on.
He, at one point, had one in the bathtub and one hanging from the shower, and he slept with one in the bed next to him for a while simply because he didn't have time to dispose of it. It really points to somebody not who was in control of that, but who, in a sense, was being controlled by that. I thought the rhetoric at the trial took a very bizarre turn in that it was presented to the jury as though killing and eating and masturbating over dead bodies and having sex in the viscera of the bodies was just another sexual choice that Jeff had made. And it was clear to me, reading his very horrifying confession to the police, that it was anything but that. That the killings got more desperate for him, not calculating.
People paint him out to be a loner. I wouldn't say he was a loner. He attached himself to my crowd of friends. I wouldn't say he was a close friend. I wouldn't say he had any close friends. But he kept to himself sometimes when he wanted to, and other times he could be very outgoing and get involved with things, but he wasn't your average student. About his home, we never went to Jeff's house. We never went in his home, and that was because we had heard from neighbors, fellow students that lived in the neighborhood, that his parents fought bitterly and that his house was not a place you want to spend any time because of his parents. You know, Jeff really didn't invite people in. He didn't invite you over much. And I think in a way maybe he felt embarrassed about the situation at home that his parents fought so much.
He gained a reputation as the class clown. Acting out in a bizarre or unexpected manner became known at his school as, quote, doing a DAHMER.
All of a sudden you'd be walking down the hall and you'd hear someone yelling and hollering and running through the hallway, and it's Jeff Dahmer in the middle of the day, running, flapping his arms, yelling, hurricane drill, everybody hide." very polite to adults, dressed very nice, very respectful to teachers. Did his work. He could be an A student if he wanted to. Other times he would fail a class because he had no interest. He could be very polite with very good manners, yes sir, no sir, when he spoke with teachers. No one really knew what was going on in his mind. He didn't open up to anybody. He didn't have any close friends. And he had really slipped away from his social life the older we got in high school.
I don't think any of us thought of Jeff Dahmer as a bad guy in high school. I knew him as a different person. One day, I'm standing there in the hallway. Jeff Dahmer runs up to me, and he puts his head on my chest. And I'm like, hey, what are you doing? What's going on? And then he stands up in a straight manner, and he says, I wanted to hear what your heart sounds like. And then he ran away down the hall. My name is Mike Kukral, and I've known Jeffrey Dahmer all during our teenage years as a classmate in school. The Jeff Dahmer fan club was a group of us who thought Jeff Dahmer was just a funny kid because he would be into doing pranks and goofy things. My favorite thing that Jeff Dahmer did was in the library. And we had a pretty tough librarian. Jeff would be sitting there with his face in the book, not even looking up. And he would shout at the top of his lungs her name, real fast and really loud. And she would get up and she would be wanting, who said that? Who is that? Never did she suspect it was Jeff Dahmer. He could get away with things for a long time and not get caught. And we learned that later from him too. People started talking about his drinking when he was about 17 years old. Jeff drank whatever he could get his hands on. Beer, whiskey, or even scotch. It wasn't social drinking at a party. It was regular drinking before, during, and after school. And I think that's how he got through the day. He was becoming sort of a lost person. Well, these are the high school yearbooks from Revere High when I was there, along with Jeff Dahmer. The most famous photograph in our yearbook is one of Dahmer's pranks. And this is the photograph right here. In our senior year, they took photographs of all the groups. They took photographs of the sports groups and the clubs and everything else. And Jeff Dahmer got in group photos that he was not a member of the group. And I think the funniest one is the National Honor Society, which is supposed to be the brightest kids, right? The smartest kids. And definitely our senior year, Jeff Dahmer was not in that group academically. But he's in this photograph, and I believe it's the president of the group had him blacked out. So in all the yearbooks, there's this body without a head. And that's one of the first things I thought about when I heard he was arrested for some reason. I just remembered this strange photograph that is so haunting today to look at and know that this person right dead center in the middle is Jeffrey Dahmer. I think we're fascinated by Dahmer's childhood because it was a more normal childhood. He wasn't in reform school. He wasn't arrested as a kid. He had a family around him. He had parents and brother, and he had a nice home. How could someone possibly do the things he did, given his background? He had everything going for him. What happened?
Jeff was really good at imitating people. He could imitate teachers. He imitated people who had weird speech patterns. He was very good at doing that, and he loved doing it. He was a great mimic. several of us went to the mall with him one time for him to act out and do nutty, crazy stuff in the mall that we just would watch from a distance. Going up an escalator the wrong way and yelling at people. He had a lot of nerve to do stuff. He'd yell at people, out of the way, out of the way. And he'd be going up the escalator the wrong way in the store, which was pretty funny to us at that age. And I remember him trying health food samples that were being handed out in the mall, and he just filled his mouth with all these seeds. And then just another one. And then he just spit it all out, all over the place. It poof, all over the place in the mall, and ran away yelling, I'm allergic, I'm allergic. That's pretty funny. I mean, I wouldn't be able to do something like that at that age. I didn't have the nerve to do that, but Jeff could do it.
Jeśli chodzi o Mike'a, to mnie zainteresowała taka rozbieżność, gdzie w tym pierwszym wywiadzie mówił, że no Jeff, w tym domu Jeffa nie działo się za dobrze, że nikogo nie zapraszał, że jednak to była jakaś rzecz, która odróżniała Jeffa od innych osób. Natomiast już w tym jednym z ostatnich wywiadów jakby takie mam wrażenie, że poddał się tej narracji mediów, że no Jeff to z takiego typowego, normalnego domu pochodził. I ten Mike ma kanał na YouTubie. Ja oglądałam jeden z jego filmików. Ma jeden filmik o Jeffie. Ten filmik był realizowany jeszcze przed produkcją Netflixa, bodajże on jest sprzed 2 lat, a nakręcił go z okazji Halloween. Opowiada tam o tym, że właśnie Jeff DAHMER, seryjny morderca, był jego kolegą z klasy. Opowiada sytuację, kiedy właśnie skończyli już szkołę średnią i 2 tygodnie po ukończeniu mieli coś w rodzaju imprezy w gronie właśnie osób z klasy, w gronie osób, które skończyły tą szkołę. I Mike wspomina, że odwoził Jeffa, to znaczy wracał samochodem, zobaczył, że Jeff wraca pieszo. No Jeff, jako że lubił sobie popić, no to wiadomo, że owszem miał samochód, natomiast no jako że lubił sobie popić, to nie brał samochodu, ponieważ no po prostu chciał się napić. I Mike zabrał go właśnie, chciał go podwieźć do domu. I to, co wspomina, to, że Jeff prawie nic nie mówił, że no on próbował z Jeffem coś tam porozmawiać, jakie masz plany, co teraz i tak dalej, natomiast Jeff, no bardzo ciężko było od niego cokolwiek wydusić. I to było 2 tygodnie po ukończeniu szkoły średniej, natomiast tydzień po ukończeniu szkoły średniej Jeff pierwszy raz zamordował. I co było takie specyficzne dla Jeffa, co Mike wspomina, to no on akurat z tymi znajomymi ze szkoły średniej utrzymywali kontakt, spotykali się czasami, no jak to właśnie bywa wśród znajomych, natomiast Jeff totalnie zniknął, totalnie nikt z nim nie miał kontaktu. I kolejną sytuację, jaką wspomina Mike na tym filmiku, było już wtedy, kiedy dowiedział się o tym, co Jeff zrobił. Było po aresztowaniu Jeffa. Akurat Mike był wtedy za granicą, był w Czechach i otworzył gazetę tam i pierwsze, co mu się rzuciło w oczy, to zdjęcie właśnie domu Jeffa z Ohio. Tego właśnie domu, do którego go podwoził. Przeczytał tam parę informacji o morderstwie i co ciekawe, to Mike w pierwszym momencie pomyślał, że chodzi o ojca Jeffa. Na początku totalnie mu nie przyszło na myśl, że może chodzić właśnie o Jeffa. Napiszcie proszę komentarz, jeśli filmik Wam się podobał, ponieważ pozwoli mi to zwiększyć zasięgi. Ja zapraszam na kolejną część. To będzie wywiad z policjantem, który przesłuchiwał Jeffa. 3. część to będzie wywiad z psychologiem, który z nim rozmawiał. Natomiast 4. to będą osoby, które służyły z Jeffem w wojsku w Niemczech. Także już teraz zapraszam. Pozdrawiam Was serdecznie i mam nadzieję do zobaczenia.